Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for a very informative speech. And now we have some questions and answers for you that we'll get into. The first question is about NAFTA. Where are we now? Your perspective.
NAFTA?
NAFTA.
Well, I think the success is has exceeded the expectations. And if you look at Mexico, it's one of only 2 countries in the last 10 years that has had an increased number of people in the middle class. So I think the opportunities continue to grow. I think we should modernize NAFTA. I think one of our problems with NAFTA is people perceive, when the news coverage takes place about a plant that closes, it always focuses in on countries, particularly the countries in NAFTA that were responsible for the closure of the plant. But when a plant goes from 1 shift to 2 shifts, from 2 shifts to 3 shifts, when it goes from 200 employees to 1,000 employees, because of trade in this neighborhood, it doesn't leave the news. So all of us who believe in trade, and I do, have a job to do to continue to promote the benefits of trade, and not only just in this neighborhood of NAFTA, but Canada and the United States and Mexico should work very hard to make sure the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is dealing with the Asia-Pacific region, has a trade agreement that has the rule of law and reciprocity. And I think together we can do that. That's what we're trying to do now as we negotiate what they call the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which will be a huge benefit to California, because you are in the middle of North America and you're in the very close proximity with the great hub in your ports to Asia. But we want to make sure the rule of law and reciprocity are part of it. That's a long answer to a short question.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget, when I come from a parliamentary system, we have question period all the time. Question period is non-answer period.
Please comment on the problem in Germany with solar power.
Well, solar is expensive, so I don't know all the numbers. But when I was Premier of Manitoba, the cost of solar was about 5 times higher than the cost of wind. And for us, wind was about 30% higher than the cost of hydro. But we wanted wind to back up hydro to some degree, as long as it was within that range. I think in Germany, they've made a huge decision to eliminate nuclear, and they're going to a lot more coal. And of course, the environmentalists have argued that they should get rid of nuclear, but coal has higher emissions than nuclear. So that's going to be an interesting debate with the new coalition government. Again, the unintended consequences of some decisions are not exactly what you thought they would be. But I can't comment on solar in Germany. I know there was a proposal to have transmission lines underneath the Mediterranean Sea from Libya at one point to Germany. There's been a lot of ideas, but solar is important, and the cost is going down, but how it hasn't gone down as much as, in terms of utility bills that most people, it's got to be part of a mix, but it can't be the sole source of energy. And Germany has less sun than Canada. You wouldn't believe that, but that's a paid political announcement from Canada. Come on up, it's a dry cold.
Staying on the energy questions, what is your opinion on fracking hydraulic?
Well, I think the advantages of proceeding fracking oil and gas, I think particularly gas, I think people are just beginning to realize the huge advantage to the United States to have gas now available at an affordable rate. I really believe that the advantages of that have got to be articulated over and over and over again. It allows the United States to in-source manufacturing that left this country. It allows for a lot of important opportunities for transition from different fuels to gas in terms of reducing emissions. I've been on panels with T. Boone Pickens. He's an interesting person to be on a panel with. he gets up there and says, I'm 84 years old and I work billions of dollars and I don't give a damn what you think about me. I'm not part of any of those three criteria. I do care what you think. And but he talks about moving the 8 million trucks in the United States to gas, and I think that's an opportunity. The key is to have standards so no one has an operation that offends or pollutes the water table in a very sensitive way, because people opposed to gas will use that example. They will use the lowest common denominator example as the way to oppose all of the opportunities that this represents in the United States.
Thank you. This question is from Alex from OC's TV media producer. What is Canada's position regarding Iran's nuclear deal with US and 5+1 EU countries reached last month in Geneva?
Well, we're skeptical about Iran, no disrespect to the media covering this, but we want sanctions that led to this 6-month and now 5-month agreement to work, because the alternative is not very desirable. All of us are committed to Iran not having the ability to close the gap and obtain a nuclear weapon. So we want the negotiations to work. But the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and we're therefore very, very, very worried.
The second part of his question is, despite opposition from the Obama administration, today 26 US senators introduced legislation to impose new sanctions on Iran. What is your assessment of the new situation? Is it going to help or make the situation more complicated?
Well, there's a strong bipartisan view in the Senate to be skeptical about Iran. Will a sanction law override the agreement that Secretary Kerry and the President has with the 6-month agreement? I'm not sure it will, but I think that the skepticism, the kind of worry that the senators have, and the consequences of that worry are hopefully heeded by Iran in this next 5-month period, because it's very critical.
Well, there's a lot of interest about Iran, so I'm going to read 3 questions, okay, Mr. Ambassador, and then maybe you can combine to one answer. The first question is, when you speak about Iran, what do you think about the latest bank and corruption operations in Turkey? About Turkey breaking Iran's money and politics embargo? The second question is, why did Canada stop diplomatic relations with Iran? And the last one regarding Iran is, Saudi Arabia said of Iran, if the US does not do anything, we will do something. What do you think the Saudi Arabians will do?
Well, let's be honest, the country that has the most capacity to implement consequences is the United States. So all of us can put out a press release, but nobody has the capacity and the horsepower equal to the United States. So sometimes I think the United States, when they hear countries saying this or that, they kind of say, right. Press release is not a capacity. They're worried about it, but it's more complicated by some of the other religious disagreements in the Middle East. And you see that, we didn't talk about Iraq tonight, but every day you see a little news clip in the New York Times with the Shiites killing the Sunnis and the Sunnis killing the Shiites. That's pretty worrisome as well in terms of the Middle East. The other questions about Turkey, I'm the ambassador to Canada and the United States. It's way above my pay grade to talk about that.
Beginning to sound like TV.
I told you it's not answered.
Okay, I'll now change the subject.
Okay.
This question is from Judge Jim Gray. You are right, Canada is our most important trading partner. But in his perception, our government has been arrogant toward Canada. What is your view of the relationship?
Well, I think that we have a very good working relationship. We've got a beyond the border policy agreement between the President and the Prime Minister that has just been negotiated. So, for example, instead of having 2 ships, say off the coast of BC and Washington State, we have 1 ship with Coast Guard personnel from the U.S. being trained with RCMP officers to be on the same ship. It's a great idea because it saves money and it actually manages risk in a more coordinated way. We're trying to work together to expand cargo. It's inspected once, accepted twice. Luggage, we used to take luggage off airplanes because we had a slightly different system. Now in the U.S. now we inspect it once with the same equipment. There's a lot of things we're doing together. I would say the United States has involved us and included us in Libya. We've worked together on Afghanistan. We're working together with sanctions on Iran. We're working together with sanctions on Syria. We're working very carefully together in a lot of places around the world. With $2 billion a day in trade, we have disputes. Sometimes it's our fault, sometimes it's your fault. I would like to modernize NAFTA to eliminate some of those disputes. We have the controversy of the pipeline. Obviously that's very public, but Canada has options. If the United States does not take our oil, we can sell it to China, we can sell it to India. We're not going to stand still. So that's the ball, the tennis ball is in the U.S. court because we will not stand still. And that's got nothing to do with arrogance, it's reality.
What is, in your opinion, the status of the negotiations regarding the Arctic Ocean?
Well, I think the ice is melting faster than the policy. Now, the United States is not, Secretary Hagel was at a meeting I was just at in Halifax with a lot of other defense secretaries, and he stated that the United States believes in the rule of law, but from our perspective, the United States actually has a lot of horsepower in the Arctic that's helpful to Canada as part of NORAD. So that's the positive side. But we have signed the UN Convention of the Treaty of the Sea. And every Arctic nation has except the United States. Now the United States, to be fair to it, has other issues to deal with. They're dealing with the South China Sea. They're dealing with the Straits of Hormuz. And so it's not as if there's not other issues they have to consider. They can't treat the Arctic Ocean separately from other places. I just want you to know that Canada knows that the North Pole is completely within the sovereignty of Canada, and Santa Claus, therefore, is a Canadian citizen. And this holiday season, we will make sure we will claim him. Because he's graduating from University of California, he will have a lot better success getting access to the visa in Canada after he graduates. So that's our position on the Arctic and the North Pole.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. The next question is Canada playing a big role advising the U.S. on world views?
I think the Prime Minister and the President discussed all the issues. I was just at an event at the embassy a couple of weeks ago where the Chief of Defense Staff, Nancy, was there with our Chief of Defense Staff from Canada. We all have different people we listen to. I think Canada and the United States have a relationship with an organization called the Five Eyes that provides a lot of intelligence as well as a lot of judgment. The Five Eyes are made up of Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And that is a very useful organization. But yes, I do believe we're listened to.
The next question is, do you think that this federal sales tax or value-added tax is working in Canada, and should U.S. apply it?
Oh God, another non-political question from the questions. The whole issue of tax is a huge issue. You know, the complicated tax code in both our countries. B, Canada has reduced its corporate tax from 35% to 25%. The United States has a higher corporate tax rate, but it has more deductions, so it depends on your industry. I think the tax issue can't be just, should we do value added or should we not? And what does Canada feel? And what do we don't feel? Suffice it to say that on R&D tax issues and on corporate tax issues, Sir's mentioned small business tax in Manitoba. I eliminated small business tax in Manitoba completely. Our view is that we're cooperating with you. We will continue to lower taxes, and we will not stand still on that. There is a consumption tax in Canada. There's some in the States, and even in my hotel bill last night here, there was a tax. I don't know what it was called. I better be careful because it's a beautiful part of the world. If it was sunny, I would have paid that tax today. But just kidding. Don't take it personally. I think there's going to be a movement in the United States more and more to a user pay system on taxes. We're building a bridge together, the Detroit-Windsor border, and tolls will pay for it, the users will pay for it, and you look at airports, you look at highways, you look at those kind of things. Governments don't have nearly enough money to deal with infrastructure, and I think we're going to have more and more public-private partnership where the public pays as part of a user fee and the private sector builds.
Thank you, Mr. Investors. No, we find that fairly, where I came from, we did a few of those and they worked quite well. Very good. Well, we saved the best question for last. We cannot have a program with Canada and not talk about hockey. Yeah. So the question is, how do you feel about hockey? What are your thoughts about using hockey as a means to strengthen international relations?
Hockey. Well, let me just say that I'm absolutely committed to the fact that if Canada and the United States plays for the men's and women's gold medal in Sochi, Russia, after all the money Putin's put into the Olympics to host that in Russia, if that happens and the Russians are not in the gold medal game, Vladimir Putin will not take his shirt off ever again. And that would be a good development for the world, I would say.
Thank you very much.